Welcome to the Guiding Brands podcast with your host and chief guide, Karen Vick. This is a podcast for service-based small businesses who want to get a handle on their marketing so they can attract and gain new customers. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. She has been in my life now for a little over a year. We actually took a course together and somehow we got connected. I think she reached out to me on LinkedIn or I reached out to her. I don't remember, but LinkedIn is where it started. And I'm just so happy to have her here today. We are going to be discussing sales, and I think she is the best person to do that just because of her personality, how she delivers her knowledge and experience. And I am just looking forward to this conversation. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest. So Katie Armentrout is a fantastic woman. She says, if you spend 5 minutes with Katie and she'll recommend a book, crack a joke, or ask if you know anyone from Iowa. I'm going to be waiting to hear that happen in this conversation. So 5 minutes in, Katie has over 20 years of experience in leadership, team building, and customer service. She is an accomplished leader and is known for her ability to connect with people and build lasting relationships. She's trained thousands of people, including CEOs, sales professionals, restaurant servers, retail and nonprofit teams on the power of connection and art of service. And that lends greatly with the topic for today's episode, which is sales secrets for small business success. Okay, she's going to provide us with some insights into this, and I'm just looking forward to this conversation. So, with that said, Katie, bring me up to speed. Tell me, what have you been up to? Because 1 minute you're all gung ho on just sales. And I know you cover this to some degree in what you're doing now, but now it's team building, so correct me if I'm wrong. Tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It is such an honor to be here. I just absolutely reflect the sentiments right back at you. So glad that we met and we're on this entrepreneurial journey together.
Yes.
And also, do you know anyone from Iowa? Have you ever met anyone from Iowa?
I have. I actually have. In my former life, I worked for a franchise system, and we actually brought on a gentleman from Iowa. I cannot remember the town in Iowa, but yes, I do.
That's awesome. That is my home state. So I grew up in Dubuque, Iowa. It's a small town right on the Mississippi. It's where Field of Dreams was filmed. So that movie is the movie is so old now, but the field has made a comeback. So it's a little bit more relevant again. So anyway, my husband always laughs because I just end up in conversations about Iowa.
That's why when we started talking a bit on LinkedIn about sales and my struggles, and you said to me, I think it was actually we had a conversation and you said to me, Karen, it's not that they'll build it and you build it and they'll come.
Yes, I say that a lot. Yeah, that gets into, and the entrepreneurs that I coach, or they're like, well, I put out a post and I didn't get any sales. And I'm like, well, of course not. That's not how it works. It's not if you build it, they will come. You have to go out and get them.
Exactly. Okay.
At some point it is, but later after once you're more established. So
I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh no, that's okay. Well, I had to ask in the first 5 minutes and be true to my bio. But so when I started, so I have a history in sales, and actually kind of going back to when I first started in Iowa, I grew up working for my parents. So they have a retail store, or they had a retail store in our town. And I started working there when I was about 12. And because child labor laws don't actually apply if it's your own children. So it's the lesson there. And so I was raised in customer service. And this is really, I go back to that. I'm like, well, that's kind of like what those are all the skills that I used that made me successful in sales. It wasn't that I was like this, trained as a salesperson. I'm like, I was trained in customer service, and this was customer service in retail in the 90s. So there was not online shopping. There were not product reviews. You would actually have to, as a customer, you'd have to leave your house, leave your couch and go into a store. And it was a gift store. So kind of, if you think of like a Hallmark,
Yes.
a lot of precious moments, Beanie
Yes.
Babies, those types of things. So people would walk in and they'd be like, I'm looking for a wedding gift. I'm looking for a baby gift. And, you couldn't just go to Target and get on a wedding registry, like again at the time. So I was very good at like interacting with people, interacting with strangers from a very young age, asking them questions, learning how to have a conversation, learning how to read people, like walk around the floor and be able to tell, like, okay, this person looks lost, and then approach them and say, like, can I help you? What are you looking for? And then also dealing with irate customers, which is a skill in and of itself. And being able to like diffuse the situation, comp them something, and then, like bring it to resolution pretty quickly. So that's kind of my background, and where I started was, working in that retail store for a while. And so all credit to my parents for not just raising me as parents, but really for, instilling that work ethic and those skills. So
who would want to turn down a cute kid? I'm sure you were a gorgeous kid at 12, so, and everybody probably knew you. So they didn't want to let you down. And now,
Yeah.
and I just thought of something. I never said it to you before, but we have that in common in this retail background.
Yeah.
My parents too. My mom had her store, but unfortunately, she passed before I could know her in that setting. But
Mhm.
that has been a part of me, and I ended up in retail myself before, this was my former life, retail.
Yeah.
I'm a Toys R Us kid for life, so
Yes.
I get it. I get it. And now I know, even more why we connect, the way that we do. So awesome. I'm sorry I
Yeah.
interrupted you again.
Oh, that's okay. It's a conversation. And that's also too, I think everyone should work in like a retail store or a restaurant at some point in their life.
Yeah.
You just it's a great training environment just on like how to deal with people, how to work
Yeah.
with people, how to,
Hmm.
because not everybody is kind. A lot of people are. It's changed a little bit these days, but
Yeah.
it's a great setting. It's fast paced. So a lot of like just people skills are gained in those environments.
Yeah.
Um,
Service, learning about
yeah,
service. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
hospitality, even like working the front desk at a hotel. I mean, all of those things where you're just interacting with people are really great training grounds. So yeah, that's how I grew up. I will answer the question you did ask me. So when I
Hmm.
started my company, I was just sales and customer service training. And honestly, if I could go, I've thought about this, if I could go like door to door to every retailer and restaurant and just train them on customer service, like post pandemic in our current world, there's very much a need for that. I would do that. But, I was getting training. So the first, clients and customers that I had, they were, they'd bring me in, and it didn't matter if it was like an hour, a couple hours a day. And they're like, okay, great, like train our sales force. But it's difficult to like get results from just someone from the outside coming in for
Hmm.
like a single workshop, right? Doesn't
Hmm.
matter if it's me. I mean, maybe like Tony Robbins would have more success and inspiration, but like it's not about like a one-time thing. Training is not a one-time event.
Ongoing. Yeah.
It's ongoing. And then I
Hmm.
learned that actually like the number one driver of your customer service. So, and also just for your audience and for you, I use the word sales and customer service interchangeably. They are the same thing to me. And we can get into that later, but it's the same thing. It's like you're treating your customer well. Those who excel at sales long term they have a really good customer service mindset. So, but so I learned like the number one driver of a company's customer service is not who's training them, it is their company culture. So if you think about it, if you as a customer, or I'm sorry, as an employee, if you don't feel valued, right? Like if you feel undervalued by your management or by, the leadership, it's really hard to turn around and like face a customer and just like go above and beyond for them.
Right.
So typically the mindset of the employee is, I don't get paid enough for this, not my job. Right. And that shows a lot in the world today of like, they're just not valuing people. So, I'm learning like, okay, how do I impact customer service? That's still ultimately my goal is like, how do you impact customer service? How do you influence people? And then it's like, okay, it's, culture. And then culture is set by the leader of the organization. And this is like John Maxwell's leadership led concept. But the leader is the one who sets the culture for, if it's a large organization like a corporate team, the leader sets the culture for the team.
Yes.
And so that's how ultimately I wanted to affect customer service, and I still do, but I learned the most impactful way for me to do that isn't just by doing one-off trainings. It's actually to find leaders and impact the leaders and work with the leaders and train the leaders on like leadership, on service, on team building, on culture, help them build the culture. And then it kind of flows down the chain.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I mean, you're doing what you set out to do. And it also the words one to many comes to mind too. Whereas you are there dealing one-on-one most times in your previous role or iteration of what you're doing now. And now you get the opportunity to train and influence even more people, at a greater, more rapid pace and a greater scale. So this is awesome. So you got a bunch of little Katie soldiers running around out there in service.
I have 3 at home. Maybe that's enough.
Yes. Yeah. Them too, I'm sure, but awesome. So, I love what you're doing. And, I love that we can, connect our past to where we are right now. It's amazing how the things that we did as children, as young people, we often don't think that it's going to mean anything. It's going to matter in our lives when we get older, but here it is, listen, your parents, you worked in that store. And, I need to ask my sisters, why is it that they grew up with my mom in the store and I'm the only one that's having this bug? No, actually, one other sister and I, we're the two that are odd. Out of the 5 girls, we're the odd ones with entrepreneurship. So it's
She
very
may not
cool.
have needed you at that point.
Yeah, may not have.
She maybe had her workforce developed at that point where
probably
it wasn't a
probably.
mandate.
probably. So, okay. So, going into this idea of sales, the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this is because I don't know if you remember when I came to you, I was petrified. I mean, I still am. I'm not telling you that I am like this sales guru and whatnot. I have to be very intentional about how I approach, getting business, business development, and, go through those exercises, some of those exercises that you trained me on, right? And I know a lot of small businesses struggle with that. And they also often think of sales and marketing as the same thing. And so this podcast is about marketing. It's about helping small businesses grow. And so, I want to kind of differentiate the two and talk a little bit about, what it takes to deliver or be a good salesperson, so,
Mhm.
many of us find it scary. It's just daunting. So if you
Mhm.
can, what advice would you give, that person that's listening right now, that's feeling the way that I feel, or, you know,
Mhm.
felt really last year when we first met?
Yeah,
What?
absolutely. And this is, yeah, I have coached a lot of people in sales, just throughout my career, whether it's mentoring someone, direct reports at the companies that I've worked, and then in my own business too, coaching people. And it is a common thing. And there was a study that was done that, like, if you just, and I've done this like informally on my own as well. Like, if you ask people, like, okay, I'm going to give you what are the words that come to mind when you say the word sales? Like, when you hear the word sales, what comes to mind? About 80% of the words that people come back with immediately are
Mhm.
negative.
Mm.
So it's manipulative, pushy, aggressive, all of those things, like arrogant, like all, like, it's a lot of negative words. There are positive words like solutions, confidence, um, different things, but it's very, it's negative. It,
Mhm.
like, just initially it's negative. And I think that's driven, one, by Hollywood, because if you think
It's
about,
true.
I love salesmen. I mean, but if you think about, like, way, way back, like Glenn Ross with Alec Baldwin, who's like, always be closing, right? Like
Yes.
ABC. He was, not a nice person. He's not a kind person. Like, he was a jerk. And if you think of like Wolf on Wall Street, Boiler Room, like early Ben Affleck movie. You love all these movies, even Tommy Boy with, Chris Farley, which is a
Yes.
great sales training movie. Salespeople are typically depicted as just like ruthless, aggressive people.
Sleazy. Yeah.
Sleazy,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like, that's not the case. Like, do those people exist? Absolutely. Are they successful long term? Like, do they build relationships long term? No.
Mhm.
And you can, actually, in Tommy Boy, there's a line of like, oh, my dad was so good at sales, like he could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves. And it's like, you could do that, but you do that one time.
Right.
Like, you can be successful at that once. That does not set you up to build a long-term relationship.
Right.
Um, so people are often intimidated by sales, and I think it is some of the media around us. And then it also, I think we all have a fear of rejection. And you're putting yourself out there, and specifically with a small business, an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, it's very vulnerable, because it's like, this is my business. It's one
Mhm.
thing to sell like a widget or a service for someone else,
Yes.
but when it's something that you've personally come up with or invented, or designed, to put yourself out there and hear no, like, that's really
Yes.
intimidating.
Mhm.
But I also tell them, I'm like, specifically to like the like really small businesses, I'm like, here's the thing with sales. Another way to think about the word sales is revenue. Like,
Mhm.
it's money, and you've got to do it. Like, you've
Yes.
got to do it or you're not in business.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
it can be very intimidating for people, but like anything else, when you, educate yourself on how to do it well, and then you practice, practice,
Practice.
practice, and just practice,
Yes.
you will, I mean, you get better at it. You get better
Mhm.
at dealing with rejection. You get better at handling objections in the moment. But it just takes a lot of practice, and, there's a lot of mindset work that goes into it, of like, I'm like, don't
Definitely.
think of it like you're selling, but like, it's really just a conversation.
And I tell you, what I experienced last year. So this year is about me, um, l- you know, putting into practice activities that counter the challenges that I had last year, trying to figure out how to solve those problems and understand why things happened the way they did. And one thing that I observed was when I um, stopped putting myself out there, networking, talking to people, reaching out to people that I knew, old clients, those kinds of things, business took a nosedive, when I slowed down in doing those things. And here's the incredible thing. It's like the universe said, okay, you're trying this. And it's not necessarily the people that I've been talking to that I'm getting business from. It's suddenly doors open, and it's as if your confidence and the attitude or mindset that you now have in going out there opens doors for you. And the moment I stop, when I slow down, things slowed. So I agree with you. It's scary, and it's your business and so on. But what I'm trying to do now is actually not use the word sales so much. I say
Yeah.
business development. I am
Yep.
developing business for my business. And it it resets me. It reframes the way that I think about this, rather than just this curse word, sales,
Right.
yeah, so yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Sales can be a four-letter word to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've all had bad experiences with being sold to, right?
Yes.
Like, because things have been like pushed on us. And the way that another thing with like reframing it too, I'm like, you are like, what do I love about sales is like, I love people. Like, I just love talking to people. And so you're having a conversation with someone and you're solving a problem for them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a point where you start feeling like you're pushing too much, then I would stop and I would step back. Like, it's probably like something's off. Like, you should
Oh.
never be just like pushing on someone, because the if you feel like you're having to like push or like kind of manipulate, then there's probably something you're missing. There's
Mm-hmm.
something missing in the conversation. Like, it's not the right fit, or they don't understand the benefit, or it could just be it could be something in the communication, or it could be something with the solution if it's just not the right solution for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
True.
really, it's all about asking questions. Like, another misconception is that people think,
Yes.
oh, I've got to have the pitch, right? I've got to have the slides, the deck, the brochures. And sure, you do need all of that. But when you go in for your first meeting, your first client meeting, I mean, you should be asking questions at least. Like, you shouldn't start pitching until like, two-thirds, three-quarters of the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even like 90% should be just you asking questions, getting them talking, so that you really understand the situation that they're in, what's important to them, and
Mm-hmm.
what their challenges are. You want
Yes.
them, if you don't understand that, then whatever you pitch to them it's uh, very, very unlikely that you're going to be successful if you don't really understand who you're talking to, what's important to them, and kind of the
Yes.
overall situation that they're in. So
So,
people skip that part and then they're like, why is it not working?
right, right. Or we often think that results should be immediate, even if you do have a good conversation, or you send that email out, or you are introduced by someone and you tell them about what it is that you do. You make that pitch. You oftentimes, us as small business owners, especially if you're starting out, we have this misconception that the results should come immediately, or
Mm-hmm.
if we don't get a response from this person the following day, then something's wrong with us or something's wrong with them. And what do you say about follow up? What, in terms of doing, overcoming that issue of, not getting a response right away? Is
Right.
is that
Yeah. Great
important?
question.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very common question. Um, Whenever I get this, I feel like people want like an exact answer. Like, they want me to say, well, you do 3 follow-ups and you do it
Right.
at like this
Right.
time and this time and this time. And there
Mm-hmm.
isn't a formula to it. It's more of an art than it
Mm-hmm.
is an exact science. So when people ask about follow-up, I'm like, yes, you should follow up.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand too, like, again, depending on who your client is, everyone's got stuff going on in their life. And depending on your client, like if you're the bigger the client, so if you're, I mean, I also come from a lot of B2B sales. So I'm selling, at one point I was selling like multi-million-dollar deals to Fortune 500 companies. That's a long selling cycle. Like that's, an instant sale, so to speak, and there would be 3 months. Like it's a 3 to 12 months, sometimes 2-year selling cycle. So you got to understand, like the bigger the customer, if you're in a B2B situation, the longer that's going to take. And also the more hierarchy and like red tape there is, the more people they're involved in that, in those solutions. So that's one thing, is like, you have to think like, how big is the customer? How many people are involved in the decision? And that's going to like drive the follow-up. But you do, there are a lot of ways to, so yes, that's one of the things to consider. You absolutely do need to follow up. And I think that's kind of what falls off, and it never hurts, like, to, it's always a balance. Like you want to do it, like you should have like some type of immediate follow-up. I would say within, 24 hours of the meeting, you should do a follow-up, even if it's just to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you is always free, right? Like thank you is always free to say. A handwritten note is really, it's a nice touch. It's always a nice touch because nobody does it. So that's always like a good type of follow-up. And then what's even important too is when you're in the meeting with the person, schedule the follow-up. Like I'm very like action oriented. So don't leave it open.
That's a good idea.
Be like, okay, so I'll call you in a couple of weeks. Pull out your calendar, pull out your phone or your calendar. If you're, like pull up your calendar and say, okay, so 2 weeks. All right. So that's the week. Okay. That's the week of like February 21st. Does Wednesday work for you? And then like own that. And then you can like, then you get them to commit to an actual meeting. And that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. You're on their calendar. Yeah.
Or, the other thing to do is ask them, right? Because if they're like, I'm really interested, but not right now. Okay, great. Can I follow up with you in 3 months? So again, we're in February. What's 3 months from May? Okay. Can I follow up with you in May? And they'll say, yeah, sure. Or they might say, how about the fall? So you're like asking permission, and you're also kind of setting the schedule. So they're expecting your follow-up, right?
And it's not wrong. It's not negative.
No.
I think too, sometimes they say, follow up with me in 3 months or in the fall. Fall is how many months away from now. And we take it personally, like, okay, we're never going to get this. They're not going to call me, or they're not going to answer my call when I call them back. But you never know. Like you said, people are busy. I listened to a podcast episode recently where this young graphic designer, he landed a deal with Bentley, and it was his persistence that actually brought him this opportunity. He said when the person he dealt with actually finally responded, she was like, oh my goodness, I've been so busy, we're working on this campaign, and I just didn't get an opportunity to respond to you, and it was because of his persistence why he got that deal. So I agree.
And there's a lot of things too with follow-up where you can, like best practices are like schedule the follow-up when you're in front of them. If that, doesn't happen, like do like vary the way that you follow up with them. So call them and then, wait like a week, I don't know, a couple days. Again, whatever kind of fits in your schedule, and then do an email, or you can do a text. If another question too, while you're scheduling the follow-up, ask them what type of communication is best, right?
Yes.
So vary the media. What not to do is something that I just actually happened to me, where someone was trying to reach me. They called me, texted me, and emailed me within 5 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. don't do that. I actually replied to the person in email and I was like, hey, no, I'm, not interested at this time. By the way, one salesperson to another. That was a little much to do all three at once.
Wow.
Maybe try to space it out
Yeah.
next time.
Within
I
5 minutes.
couldn't resist. I
Wow.
had to I'm like, can I just tell you, that's a little overwhelming. That's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So don't do that. The other thing too, if it's follow up and if they're not responding to the follow up, like it's, oh, call me in a couple months or whatever, or if you're trying to get someone's attention, get really creative with things. I had one, this was a girl on my team in corporate who did this. The movie Catch Me If You Can had come
Mm-hmm.
out, or it was, it was on DVD. I thought this was brilliant. She went and bought the DVD, put her card on it and dropped it off at his office, and it was like, hope to catch you sometime soon. Right? Like,
Cute.
I mean, and
Yeah.
I was like, that's brilliant. And don't do that for everyone. But,
Right.
if there's like a big customer like that, do things that will stand out.
Yes.
And there's also a lot of soft ways to like follow up to, like, if you follow them on LinkedIn, like if they're active, like their post, comment on their post, like those are
Mm-hmm.
like just nudges of
Mm-hmm. Just a
interaction.
reminder, you're keeping yourself top of mind for that person. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
also, like, the more that I teach a lot about, like, you have to connect with the person first.
Mm-hmm.
And I could talk about sales forever. But you got to connect with
That's
the
okay.
person
That's what we're
first.
here for.
Right. And like, the more that you know about them, like, if you know, like, their birthday, it's like you could reach out and text and be like, hey, happy birthday. How are you doing? If it's the holidays, put them on like your holiday card. But there's a lot of other ways that you can like stay relevant to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it nurturing the relationship for current customers and potential ones.
Mm-hmm.
That you can do those little things that will make you stand out, because very few
Nobody's
people are
doing
doing
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no one's doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So those things will really make you stand out and just set you apart of like, okay, wow, I noticed that person. Like, I remember Katie because she did that. And it also, again, it builds that relationship long term, and they realize like, okay, I'm not just like another one on the list. Like, she's not just calling a list. Like, she's invested a lot in that persistence that you were, just sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are different ways that it can show up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I jumped to the follow-up before we even started the process of
That's right.
sales,
I went
but
right there with you. It's all good.
but there is before you can even follow up, you need to be able to actually approach. You need to be able to take that first step. It's like when you
Mm-hmm.
were kids and there's a dance and the person across the room you want to dance with, but you won't move from your spot.
Yeah.
So that's it. You have to. So a lot of the people that I work with and I have been interacting with are small businesses, like micro businesses or solopreneurs, and they find this, like we said, intimidating. Are there any strategies that you can share that they can use that are not what we would feel is our typical, sales tactic, like picking up the telephone? I mean, we're in a digital world now. We mentioned LinkedIn. That's how we actually started communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions for the audience?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, picking up the phone I would recommend it, because again, that talk about standing out. Again, not many people are picking up the
People are
phone,
doing that. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But it always helps. So when you're talking about prospecting, it helps to be like, just be genuine and be yourself is always the best thing. And get out there and practice. In a
Mm-hmm.
digital world, like LinkedIn is a great tool. Social media can be a great tool for connecting. I'm primarily on LinkedIn for business. I find that like works really well with the
Yes.
target. You have to
Mm-hmm.
first know, like, this is where like sales and marketing intersect, marketing. You got to know,
Right.
who am I targeting, right? Like,
Yeah.
but in a digital world, you can connect with people a lot in the DMs or, commenting on their posts. There's a lot of things that you can pick up. But what you want to do is just like look for some type of unique connection with
Okay.
people. And the first step, you really have to know your target really, 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 really well. And, if you're starting out, that can be hard. So I'd say give yourself
Mm-hmm.
some grace.
Mm-hmm.
Because you think, every entrepreneur I've talked to is like, well, there's what I thought I was doing. And then a year in, it like has evolved to something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the method that I teach is connect. There's 4 steps. So it's connect, build, solve, and serve. And so it really is like connecting with the person on some level. So not just like, digital, like not just liking their comment, but, actually like making a comment, reaching out into the DM with an actual question, maybe about something or offering a solution. Those are like good ways to like build relationships with people. And ultimately, like you have to remember to like your mindset, you are solving a problem for them,
Yes.
right? Like you're solving a problem. Like your ideal customer is like, I can't wait to like work with you, or I can't wait to like buy your product or have you help me as a service. That's your ideal customer, right? Because you're solving a problem for them. So it's a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to, a lot of it is just managing it in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just say like, you have to like look for those connection points. And also, I know we're in a digital world, but don't underestimate the power of like actual networking in-person
Yes.
events.
Yes.
There are so many local events. I've even discovered, I'm in Cincinnati. There's a lot of events here that are like free networking events for
Mm-hmm.
businesses. Or some are like very low cost, like it might be, $50, $100. Try that out. Again, know
Mm-hmm.
your customer. It's not necessarily, I wouldn't go to the Chamber of Commerce, but I think a lot of people start there. But like I work with business, I'll look at HR stuff, I'll look with sales stuff. But when you know your target, like go to some of those networking events, and um,
It's
you get to
funny.
talk to a lot of people in one time, and you get immediate feedback. So your elevator pitch,
Yeah.
then like you get to practice that with like 10 people in a day and get immediate feedback, and you will know by the look on their face if they relate to what you're talking at all. Like I
Right.
did this and I was like, okay, clearly they're not jiving with what I'm saying, so I know I got to change this different. I don't
Right.
necessarily get that feedback on social media. I just get
Right.
nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
um
It's funny. I'm giggling because I actually my interview this morning was with the director of my local chamber of commerce.
Not that that's a bad place
No,
to
no, I
start,
know
but like
that's not what you're
again,
saying. Yes.
you have
But
to
it's not the only
know.
place. And it's not the only
Yes,
place. Yes.
yes, that's not the
Yeah.
only place. You have to know like who attend, like go to the Chamber of Commerce, like go to some of the events, try it out and see if it goes well for you. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
it in building a business, it is just trial and error.
Yeah.
Like it's just trial and error. Like I
Mm-hmm.
believe me, I wish I had a magic formula. I'd be a billionaire if I did. Um,
True. So
but
true.
you,
All of
you
us.
you just have to do it. And ultimately, like with the people that I work with who are intimidated by sales, I'm like, and especially if you're a solopreneur, I'm like, if you are not out selling your business, nobody's doing it. So you
Mm.
either got to learn how to do it and do it, or you got to outsource it to someone
Pay
if that's an
someone to do
option,
it. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, but
So
you need
true.
sales to survive. Like you need the revenue.
So
So
true. So true. I
yeah.
mean, I had a list of questions and just our conversation, we're actually answering a whole bunch of them.
Good.
So let me see. What are some of the I guess networking is you mentioned, low cost. Are there any other low cost methods of sales or business development that you would actually suggest?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
A really good one, this was advice that I received too, and it's like such a good one,
Hmm.
is I guess keep in mind, like I'm in the services industry, although it would work with a product too, I think. But make a list, like start with the people you know, especially if you're like intimidated by sales, make a list of like 20 people, 40 people,
Mm-hmm.
50 people, like, you know, a lot of people. And, and you're not, and set up conversations with them and tell them about like, okay, here's my company, here's my, you know, product or service, right? And you're not necessarily like selling to your cousin or to your best friend, but they might know someone like that. You're not necessarily pitching your best friend on being your client, but it's like, okay, here's what I do, here's what I offer. Do you know anyone who could, you know, who might fit this description?
Right.
And you have 20 conversations like that with people who you're comfortable with. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's a lot of practice. They will hopefully like give you, and you can invite them to give you, you know, give you feedback as well, like on your, you know, on your elevator pitch and how you're talking about it or what was unclear. Again, have those conversations either in person or ideally in person or over Zoom, but you want to be able to like read their face and see their body language. But that's a really good way to start networking is just start with your own network, start with people you know, look at who your friends are on Facebook, like go through your list of friends on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
go through your like all your connections on LinkedIn.
Past
Um,
customers,
yeah, past
past customers,
customers.
if you have past customers, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
start with the strong relationships. Who are your colleagues, your, you know, former like former managers, mentors, anyone.
Mm.
And again, it's not that you're pitching them on, it's not that you are pitching them on your cut on your idea necessarily on them being your customer, but they're going to know people. And that's a really good way to get
Mm-hmm.
started because you working by referral, because it's again, they know you and they can
Yeah.
vouch for you as a
Yeah,
person.
they trust you. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That's a really good suggestion. It just it reduces the angst, if you're talking to someone and and they'll be honest with you if they're close, to you, if they're close friends or family, they'll actually be honest with you about what it is that you're sharing and, maybe bring you back
Mhm.
down to earth or suggest
Yeah.
something, or just in the
Yeah.
conversation you'll hear something and maybe I didn't realize that, and you can make
Hmm.
an adjustment. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and what I'm hearing from this is that relationship building is the best sales tool that you have. It's just that's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, standing on a podium and shouting, what it is that you do, or, printing 200 mailers or flyers or whatever and sticking it in someone's door. It's talking to the people that and so that they can initiate some of these conversations for you. Because
Yeah.
sometimes if a conversation starts, it helps us roll into
Yeah.
what it is that we need to do. So yeah,
I
it's
think
good.
most of us, like, it's just you have to, I think you're going to be most successful if you can initiate the conversation. And even when you say, like, you know, it might not be doing 200 flyers door to door. Well, it could be. I mean, one of my clients is the Little Gym. And so it's like it's a gym for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so they opened a new location and I was training them on customer service and sales. And I was like, okay, that is like location based. So I'm like, who are the people in your area and in your zip code? So again, you got to know like who is your target and where are they, like who, what, and like who are they,
Yeah.
where are they, and then what are you going to say to them?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, when you are really, really clear on those things, and those things are fluid when you're in business, like the first like year or two, even like those can be
Mm-hmm.
fluid. But again, you just have to really like know your customer and then know like the benefits that you're like really understand like what's the problem that you are trying to solve for them, because when
Mm-hmm.
you are talking problem solution then it's not personal,
Right. Right.
you know.
Right. Right.
um
And it's
But yeah.
not, and something I learned from marketing too, it's about identifying that problem, knowing your solution to their problem, knowing it inside out, and um, being able to talk about the results that they'll get. Make them
Mhm.
see themselves and you're describing those results. So having said that, you mentioned one of my questions I had planned was to ask you to give me an example of a small business that you see doing this successfully, doing sales successfully. And you mentioned the little gym, you said.
Mhm.
Is that one of them that you could right now say, they're being successful with sales?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's more of, I mean, I think of it like a retail environment because they're
Hmm.
offering gymnastics classes to kids.
Yes.
And, in that one specifically, when I train the staff, I'm like, because it's a lot of younger people and they like love kids. They're so good at working with kids. And like, you also have to understand too, like the parent is the
Parents.
customer. Whoever is paying
Yes.
is your customer.
Hmm.
And so they were doing a lot of they were doing a lot of things right where it's like, okay, do you have coffee? Okay, if there's parents around, like, are you giving them coffee? Right? Like free coffee, free
Yeah.
water. Like we had a whole conversation just again, this is a retail environment, but I'm like,
Yes.
the importance of greeting people and how you greet people when they walk in the door.
Hmm.
Um, but then specifically on sales, it's like, there's features and benefits, right? The feature is like the thing, the tech, the specs, whatever it is. People don't necessarily care about that,
Hmm.
but they do care about the benefit. How is this going to change my
The
life? And
result.
so when they were talking about the classes, so they offer gymnastics classes to kids like 3 and up. And so the
Hmm.
3-year-olds, the parent does, you're still on site, but you're not like with your child. So basically, I'm like, as a parent, I'm like, you get an hour to yourself while your child is in class. You get to
Mm.
sit here. We have free Wi-Fi, free water, free coffee,
Yes.
and you get to just sit here.
Yes.
Like that is the benefit. Like,
Part of the
how much would you
benefits.
pay for that? I would pay $1,000. Maybe more, depends on the day. But I was like,
Yes.
that's how you sell that. And I can say that because I am a parent. Like
Hmm.
I have 3 little kids.
Yes.
So like that's a huge benefit. Like, I mean, yes, it is important that the kids are being like socialized and they're getting activity and balance, and all those things are great. Those are like the features, those are like the tech specs, if you will. But
Hmm.
really, how do you really sell that parent what's important to them? Time. Like, just
Freedom.
yeah, just peace. there's
Peace.
a there's a coffee shop next door. I'm like, you can go next door, grab some coffee and come back. But like,
Yes.
that's what's really important to your customer. And so that was a real like game changer when we were having that conversation. I'm like, this is how you sell a class. And they're like,
I like that.
oh,
I like that.
right.
You can
So
do
you have
that.
to,
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
we were probably just going to say the same thing. I'm like, so think about that. And like, how do you adapt that to whatever product or service that you're selling? Like,
Hmm.
what does the customer really care about? It's not necessarily the features, but it's usually time, it's resources, right? Like it's time, it's like, what are the cost savings? But a lot of it's going to come back to like the time and the headaches. Like, really, when I say know your customer, what are their biggest headaches? Like,
Yeah.
really, like when you have a well defined problem, then you will have a well defined solution. And then that selling becomes really
Really
easy. It
easy
comes really natural
because you can
after that.
talk to them. You can talk to their issue. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Love that.
Yeah,
Love that. Love that. So I'm gonna ask you one last big question as it relates to
sure.
sales. And that is, right now, you hear stories of the economy being down and people aren't buying and people aren't willing to spend money. They can go on YouTube and learn how to do things, DIY things, whatever. How can you help a small business owner overcome that mindset and the thought and the news and everything else going on? Do you have any suggestions for
Uh,
them where sales
yes.
is concerned? Yes.
Well, You actually nailed it because you're like mindset. It's all mindset. And here's the thing. Um, the economy is what the economy is. And so I don't know if people want to follow this or not. I don't follow mainstream media anymore. Like I stopped following that a long time ago because it is always negative. If you are looking for something positive and ways to manage your mindset, the mainstream news, whatever it is that whatever channel it is, whichever one, it doesn't matter. Those are like for-profit companies. And so they're trying to get you to it's all like clickbait, right? Like it's always doom and gloom. If you want to follow something positive, go to Tank's Good News. I love it. That's like a really great way, but it's like
Tank's
people
Good
are,
News. I'm writing that down.
yeah, Tank's Good News. So TANKS Good News. Is always uplifting stories there, like real uplifting stories about people helping people. It's not just cat videos. Like, so, but you have to manage your mindset, and it's important. I think if you haven't heard it, but it's like you are an average of like the 5 people you spend the most time with. But you have to think about that, not just people, but like what podcasts are you listening to? Like what news sources are you following? Because if you're just taking in doom and gloom all the time, then that's all you're taking in. Like that's what you will just become. So you've got to work really hard. Brian Buffini, It's a Good Life by Brian Buffini is a phenomenal podcast. Rachel Hollis, the Rachel Hollis podcast is another one. And I do love, what's the other one? Ed Milet is a really good one. But so there's a lot of things first of like managing your mindset. And then the second thing is if you get like you are the only one that can control your mind. I'm sorry, there's no other way. It's a lot of work, but you got to manage your mindset. And then the second thing is like there are problems always exist for companies. Like you as a business, you started to solve a problem. So again, ignore what people are saying about the economy. Like ignore it. You can still go out and find customers in any economy. And as long as you have a solution to someone's problem, they will buy it. They will buy it. They will. And so that's why I don't fall prey to a lot of like, I don't buy it when people are like, oh, I live in a small market or whatever. It's like, those are limiting beliefs. Those are lies that you're telling yourself. And even if that's true, like how badly do you want it? Like if you want it bad enough, you will find a way to overcome. If it's a side hustle that you're like, okay, great, I'm making some money, and you're content with just it being a side hustle, that's one thing. That's a different mindset. But if like this is your bread and butter, this is my business, I've burned the ships, I don't want to go back to like a 9 to 5, you're going to find a way to make it work.
Find a way. Okay, I like that. So it's more about mindset and what you're feeding yourself with, what you're seeing, and who you're surrounding yourself with. That will help you get through this time. Okay.
Yeah. Try new things.
We're actually almost on the hour, and I promised I wouldn't keep you beyond an hour. So I loved everything that you shared with us. Service, connection, relationships, and mindset are the big things that I got out of this conversation, and I hope that the audience would have as well. And so, where can they learn more about you and follow you to get more of this wisdom that you have to share? And we may have to do more of this because I had so many questions that I didn't ask, and more popped up as we talked. So we may have to do this again, but where can they find you, Katie?
Yeah, it would be an honor to do it again. I would love that.
Thank you.
So yeah, they can find me, my company and my website. It's People Fluence. So people and then fluence because it's about influencing people. So www.peoplefluence.com. So people, FLUENCE.com. And you can also email me directly at Katie, Katie, at peoplefluence.com. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about anything.
And social media, LinkedIn. She talks about being on LinkedIn a lot. So I'm going to suggest that. And I'll have all these links and this information in the show notes. So, people can reach out to you and, pick your brain or just follow you on LinkedIn and learn more. She's always putting out some great pieces of advice out there. So, and what I love about what you do also is that you make it personal. It's not just this regurgitating pieces of information. Sometimes, we have to be mindful about that, and you're not just selling and pitching what you do. You talk to people about what results from the work that you do, and you use real life situations, whether it be your children, your husband.
Real.
I've seen them, so yeah. So thank you so much, Katie. This was a really good conversation, and I'm gonna listen to it more than once to go back through for myself for refreshers of some of the things that you reminded me of. And I'm sure that the audience is going to appreciate hearing your wisdom as it relates to sales and just people leadership, as well. I heard that come through a lot. So thank you again. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Let's see. I am going to. That's all for this episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. I look forward to sharing with you again next week. So please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Thank you and bye for now.